The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank lost one of its top leaders in spectacular fashion last week. Bob Picard resigned from his role as the bank's global communications director, swiftly left China, and then tweeted this: "As a patriotic Canadian, this was my only course. The bank is dominated by Communist Party members and also has one of the most toxic cultures imaginable. I don't believe that my country's interests are served by its AIIB membership." Hours later, the federal government halted Canada's activity with the Beijing-based banking juggernaut.
I have instructed the Department of Finance to lead an immediate review of the allegations raised and of Canada's involvement in the AIIB.
Well, the AIIB issued a statement responding to Picard's resignation that reads in part, "Mr. Picard's recent public comments and characterization of the bank are baseless and disappointing." Bob Picard joins me now. Mr. Picard, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, David. It's great to be home here in Canada.
You've used some pretty explosive language to describe the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, saying it's a cesspool dominated by Communist Party hacks. What makes you say all of that?
Because I think there has been a real violation of governance expectations in this organization. I've been progressively more alarmed to find out that the messages as the communications director that I have been communicating with stakeholders are in many ways not the correct ones that match the reality of the organization. And that's ironic because I went to China last year to head up global communication for this bank, which at the time had a perception problem. People thought of it as a Chinese bank, and the accurate message was, no, this is genuine multinational, multilateral participation by various countries. Well, actually, it has more in common with being a Chinese bank than I had hoped for. And so the longer I've been with the bank, the more I've realized that what it does not align with the values of this country. We believe in openness, we believe in transparency, we expect accountability. I would say that these are not exactly the things that I experienced at the bank. I mean, on the inside of the bank, there is sort of oppression, and there's freedom. There's no freedom to speak up in a way that we would expect as normal. There's a fear of doing that. So it's not exactly a bank that's in the image of our country. This is a bank in the image of China, and I say that with sadness and terrible disappointment. I saw.
I'm just curious, is that a cultural problem that exists within the bank because of the way it's run, or is this dictated by Beijing? How do you see this happening?
Well, it's a very top-down culture. It's dictated by a president's office, which is filled with several members of the party. And the Communist Party, as you may know, it puts people who belong to the party into large Chinese corporations to ensure compliance with policy and to guarantee control. Now, that's not supposed to happen in a multilateral organization that's supposedly apolitical. It's apolitical outside to the world. Mm-hmm. The bank keeps saying apolitical, independent. But inside the bank, it's political. Political with Communist Party people who have effectively, in my view, an alternative power center in the bank where they're like a subterranean collection of influential insiders who make a lot of the everyday decisions. We have a board of directors. We have a management. That's our governance. But this group is a power cluster inside of the bank, and Western countries like ours should be aware of it.
Okay, so help me understand that a little bit better, because I look at the Board of Governors, like Chrystia Freeland's on the Board of Governors, the Deputy Minister, Rob Stewart, is on the Board of Governors. But it's not that level you're talking about, but baked into the bureaucracy of this, you're saying there is a cohort with outsized influence that is essentially taking its marching orders from Beijing, or just follows the lead of Beijing?
I wouldn't say that. These are favored insiders.
Right.
For example, look at the list of the leadership of the bank. I was on that list until very recently. It's a pretty international crowd, but under a lot of those foreign executives who may be there for window dressing purposes, you might have that next tier, the Chinese Director General in many cases, who's the real power behind the throne. So this is something that I've come to learn. Anybody who's worked there for more than a few months know who the party people are. And when I joined the bank, I was told this is a party person, that's a party person, and don't cross the party people. Almost like it was like a third rail. Don't touch the third rail, or you'll get zapped. And so I feel like that's an exercise in social control in a networked environment like a multilateral organization. Now, many of these people, I mean, it isn't a mystery that you'll find communists in China. 1.4 billion Chinese and 100 million members of the Communist Party. But they are the ones who occupy many of the key positions, and I have evidence in my own department of how they will share information in a way that goes beyond what should be the proper reporting structure in the bank.
Have you got a concrete example there, Mr. Picard, that really sort of drives home what you're talking about? Because 99.9% of the people at home have never worked in a multilateral infrastructure bank. So give me a concrete example of where you see this coming into play.
A party person in a department will be like a watcher or a monitor, and they'll see what's going on. And if they see something that they don't like or may be inconsistent with what the party might think, they will report right up to the top into the president's office. And the president's office is comprised of people who are party people. Now, these are, in many cases, these are really great people. I respect the president of the organization, a very competent person. But the way that they collectively operate as a almost like a parallel structure of monitoring and making sure that things are going to a certain plan, I find that alarming. And I've been there for over a year.
Right.
And as a communications guy, David, my job is to tell stories, right? So as a Canadian at the bank, I thought, okay, what, as the PR guy, is the story for Canada? And after all these months, I'm still scratching my head. I didn't find a single tangible benefit to communicate back home here to Canada of what this bank does that is consistent with our values in a way that would benefit Canadians. I don't think there's any really big benefit to Canadians here. All we're doing with our membership in this bank is we're making China look good as a country able to do multilateralism. We are effectively supporting the Chinese image campaign to show that they are ready to assume world leadership. And frankly, I don't think that's the country that we should support, especially in the current political environment.
Well, the bank says that your allegations are baseless and disappointing, to use their words, and it's welcoming the Canadian government's review that was announced by Chrystia Freeland last week. What's your response to that response?
Look, it's not easy to deal with the transparency of the situation. That being a whistleblower has provided the situation. It has been a difficult time for all of us, frankly. And I think that they're trying to keep Canada as a member. I happen to know, though, I mean, I talked to this issue with our bank president, and his opinion when I was meeting with him on this issue a few months ago, when he decided not to come to Canada on his way to Washington for the World Bank, he said, look, it would be very disappointing if Canada doesn't join, but it's a small country, and we can move on. So, that did not impress me at this time, and it's just something that we should be aware of. China has a habit of letting people know in other countries where those countries stand in the hierarchy of the world. And so he was just letting me know where Canada stands.
Well, if this bank is operating, as you say, just as a final point, Mr. Picard, do you think others may resign, people from the governance structure, other people inside the bureaucracy? Because so far you're the person who's done it in a very public way. Do you think anyone else will follow suit if it truly is operating the way you say it is?
It's hard to move on in China, I must say. You could try in earnest to find other people who think the same way I do, and I know who they are. But in China, where all the technology, all the media is 100% surveilled, they're not going to say anything to you. So I find that unlikely at this time. And I'm not, I wish them well. I mean, they do their thing. They will benefit certain projects, certain people. But for our country, which is my concern here, in terms of feeling, I felt increasingly clammy. And like I was trying to, I thought I was going to Beijing to fix an image problem and create an accurate impression. But it turns out that the reality is the impression that I was going to try to create. So this, for a PR guy, is an unconscionable and unsustainable situation.
Bob Picard, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate speaking with you.
Many thanks, David.